Hey, Mike Matthews here from Muscle for Life and Legion Athletics. And in this video podcast, we're going to talk about how to better control hunger when you're dieting for fat loss. This is a very important aspect of dieting because a number of studies have shown that the number one reason why most people's weight loss efforts fail is lack of dietary compliance. They just can't stick to their diets. Now, of course, part of that is due to the fact that many of the weight loss diets out there, especially many of the mainstream weight loss diets, are inherently very hard to stick to. They're usually very restrictive, so they don't let you eat many of the foods that you like to eat and force you to eat foods that you don't really like to eat. They're also often very low calorie, which just comes with more side effects. So the fewer calories you eat, the faster you can lose weight, but also the faster you can lose muscle, and generally the worse you're gonna feel. Many mainstream weight loss diets are also too low in protein, which generally means less fat loss, more muscle loss, and more hunger. Now, before we get to the 4 specific ways to improve hunger control, you should know that hunger is just a natural consequence of dieting. No matter how well you are doing everything in and outside of the kitchen, you probably are going to be generally hungrier than usual when you are dieting. I don't want to dive too deep into the weeds here, but the long story short is your body's natural appetite is regulated primarily by 3 hormones: insulin, leptin, and ghrelin. Now, when you eat food, insulin levels rise to help your body process and absorb the food that you ate. Leptin levels also rise, telling your body that it is fed. And then as your body processes and absorbs the food that you just ate, insulin levels fall, leptin levels fall until settling into a low baseline level. And then as time passes, ghrelin levels slowly rise, which makes your body hungry. So ghrelin turns on hunger, leptin turns off hunger. Insulin helps your body process and absorb the food that you are eating. Now, studies show that when you are in a calorie deficit, and especially when you're in a calorie deficit over a longer period of time, your circulating levels of leptin go down and your circulating levels of ghrelin go up. So what that means is you are generally just going to be hungrier, because generally what that is doing is that's sending a message to your body that it is being underfed. It needs to get more food, which is of course what you are doing when you're dieting. It's mild starvation. Research also shows that circulating leptin levels decrease even further as you get leaner, which is why dieting does get harder as you get leaner. You've probably experienced that before. In the beginning of a cut, things are pretty easy. The first week is maybe a little bit rough because it takes a week or two to adjust to the lower level of calories, but from there it's pretty much smooth sailing. But toward the end of the cut, and especially if you're going from lean-ish to really lean, you start to notice the effects more. So what you need to know here is some level of hunger and discomfort is normal when you're dieting. For me personally, even when I'm cutting to get very lean, I would say that my general hunger level doesn't really change, but I start to get hungrier in between meals, whereas normally I don't. I'll start to notice it. I like to eat every 3 to 4 hours or so. It's just how I prefer to eat. Also, from a muscle building and muscle preservation perspective, it is probably best to have 30 to 40 grams of high quality protein every 4-ish hours. And so what I'll notice though is as I am getting leaner and leaner, especially when I'm starting to get down into the 8% body fat range and below, I do feel hungry as I'm approaching my next meal. So every few hours or so, I am feeling hungry. Okay, so let's get to the 4 tips that I want to share with you for controlling hunger, the 4 best ways to mitigate hunger as much as possible when you're dieting. So the first one is to get 30 or 40% of your daily calories from protein, and ideally include some protein in each meal that you eat. The long story short here is protein is simply your best friend when you're dieting, because not only does it help you maximally preserve muscle, research has shown time and time again that a high protein diet is best for regulating appetite. Now, there are several reasons for this, but one of them is that a high-protein diet appears to increase leptin sensitivity, meaning that your body literally becomes more sensitive to leptin, and therefore you generally feel fuller and more satisfied by the food that you eat. Okay, so tip number 2 is don't heavily restrict your carbs. Do not follow a very low-carb diet, like the ketogenic diet, for example, which is super trendy these days. Now, I've worked with thousands of men and women over the years, and time again, I hear from people who are trying to follow some form of low-carb dieting because they think it's going to help them lose fat faster, which it will not, but they simply can't stick to it because they get too hungry. Now, this isn't exactly surprising because studies have shown that dietary fat is not very effective for increasing leptin levels, which again, remember, that's what tells your body that it has energy, it doesn't need food, that's what makes you feel full. And research also shows that a low-carb, high-fat diet also reduces circulating leptin levels, which of course just makes you generally feel hungrier. Now, of course, science deals with averages, remember that. So what I just said is not going to be true for everyone. There are some people who actually do generally feel fuller and just do better on a low-carb, high-fat diet when cutting, but if you're like most people, you're going to do better the other way around. You're going to do better with a higher carb, lower fat diet. And this is why I generally recommend a high protein, high carb diet for people that are cutting. It is very satiating, it is very satisfying, and it just works very well for most people. This has been shown in a number of studies as well, including studies where people were allowed to eat as much as they wanted in each meal. To quote researchers from the Royal Veterinary and Agricultural University, in conclusion, a low-fat diet high in protein and fiber-rich carbohydrates, mainly from different vegetables, fruits, and whole grains, is highly satiating for fewer calories than fatty foods. This diet composition provides good sources of vitamins, minerals, trace elements, and fiber, and may have the most beneficial effect on blood lipids and blood pressure levels. Okay, tip number 3 is to increase your fiber intake. Now, of course, fiber is an indigestible portion of food that absorbs water as it moves through the digestive tract, and it makes for good poops. But research also shows that it increases satiety. It increases fullness. Now, most people do not get enough fiber in their diets, especially when they're cutting, and especially insoluble fiber, which is particularly important for gut health. The Institute of Medicine recommends 14 grams of total fiber per 1,000 calories eaten, and many people do not get even close to that. Now, the easiest way to increase your fiber intake is to simply eat enough fruit and vegetables. 2 to 3 servings of fruit and vegetables per day, and particularly fibrous fruit and vegetables if you really want to micromanage. But if you just eat fruits and vegetables that you like, if you eat a good variety of fruits and vegetables, colorful fruits, green vegetables, and plus others, you'll be fine. Okay, the 4th and final tip for mitigating hunger when you're dieting is to avoid high glycemic carbs, but not for the reasons that most people give, which is that they are just inherently unhealthy, which is not true, or that they interfere with fat loss, not true, or cause fat gain, not true. Now, in case you're not familiar with the glycemic index, it's simply a scale that shows how quickly a carbohydrate is digested and impacts your blood sugar levels. So for example, table sugar, quite high on the glycemic index, broccoli, quite low. Now, just so you understand this tip, when I say eat mostly low glycemic carbs when you're cutting, what I'm saying is stick to carbs that are below 55 on the scale. Anything 55 and below is generally considered a low GI carb, and then you have a kind of middle from 56 to 69, and then 70 and above is considered high. And the reason why I'm recommending this is research shows that the rapid absorption of glucose that occurs after you eat a high GI carb, and especially if you eat a lot of high GI carbs in one sitting, it causes hormonal and metabolic changes that result in the desire to eat more. It also doesn't help that many of the high GI carbs that people like to eat are highly processed, nutritionally bankrupt junk foods, so to speak, that are usually low not just in nutritional value, but also fiber. Oh, and bonus tip. Tip 5, get enough sleep. Big part of controlling hunger, because when you restrict your sleep, when you don't sleep enough, your leptin levels drop and your ghrelin levels rise. Your body says, feed me. Case in point, in one study, people who slept 5 hours had 15% lower leptin and 15% higher ghrelin levels than people who slept 8 hours. That's a lot. That's significant because that's a 30% swing in terms of percentage points in an absolute sense. You're going from a baseline and you're going 15% lower on the good and 15% higher on the bad. You're going to feel that. And that really helps explain why research shows that people who sleep less are generally fatter than people who sleep more. All right, well, that's it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, please do give it a like and drop a comment down below letting me know what you thought. Also, share your experiences with hunger control, with the strategies that I just spoke about or with others that I didn't speak about. What has worked well for you? Let me know down below. And also, if you like my stuff, and you want to be notified when new stuff goes live, click the big red subscribe button over there. It's free, of course, and then click the bell and YouTube will let you know when the next highly informative video goes live. All right, that's it for now. See you in the next video.